Do you remember how things used to be? Do you remember what it was like to shake hands with people? Do you remember what it was like to hug others after church? Do you remember what it was like to see the world through unfogged glasses? You know, in many ways, it's hard to remember. It's hard to remember what things were like before it all changed, before the pandemic. It feels like 2020 has just kept going, and it's blurred into more. It's blurred into 2021. Well, welcome to our Spring Growth Group series. We're going to be thinking back on the past year, on the past experiences that we've all had. And in order to do that, we're going to think about a powerful little prefix. That prefix is re. Perhaps you recall from grade school. A prefix, it's a word or a letter placed on the front end of another word. It's prefixed to that word, and it radically changes the meaning of the word that follows. You know, hundreds of English words rely on this re prefix. There's recycle, reflect, reject, reconstruct, all of these different words that use that prefix. Well, for this growth group series, we're going to think about four in particular. Four words that show up in Scripture and that rely on this re prefix. And we're going to think about remember, return, restore, and rejoice. And as we think about these, we're going to find out that God is the primary actor in all of them. That God is the author of remembering, returning, restoring, and rejoicing. And that's good news, because that means it doesn't ultimately depend on us. That God is the one who leads us in these things, who brings these things about. For this first session, we're going to think about remember. The Bible talks a lot about remembering. We hear about it in Genesis. We hear about Joseph and his sagas in Egypt before the Pharaoh. Perhaps you remember that story. Joseph ends up in prison. Joseph interprets the dreams of some of the fellow prisoners. One of them is this cupbearer. After the cupbearer gets out, he forgets about Joseph. He forgets that he ever knew him. But eventually the cupbearer remembers. A Pharaoh has a dream and nobody's able to interpret it. But then the cupbearer remembers. I know a guy that I met back in prison. He can help you. You know, oftentimes when we think about remembering, we think about it like what we hear in Genesis, like that experience of the cupbearer. We have the experience of knowing something, forgetting something, and remembering something. There are memories from childhood that we remember. There's facts and figures and stories that we remember. But then there's also things that we forget. They slip our minds. Where's our keys? We forget about our internet passwords. We forget special dates, birthdays, and anniversaries. Well, that's a human way of remembering. But when the Bible talks about God remembering, it speaks about it in a very different way. When we hear about God remembering, we hear something more like this. Genesis chapter 8, we hear about God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. Now, when God remembered Noah, it's not like he forgot about Noah. It's not like he forgot to turn the water off and then remembered that he needed to stop the rain and the flood. Not like that at all. Rather, when the Bible talks about God remembering, it talks about God taking a past promise and bringing it into the present. More often than not, this is what we hear about God remembering in Scripture. Moreover, I've heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. When God remembers, He is taking a promise from the past and bringing it into the here and now. And it's for that reason that the people of God should rejoice and celebrate the fact that God remembers. Psalm 105 talks about this. We hear, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, call upon His name, make known His deeds among the peoples, sing to Him, sing praises to Him, tell of all His wondrous works, remember the wondrous works that He has done, His miracles and the judgments He uttered. He remembers His covenant forever, the word that He commanded for 1,000 generations." Because God remembers, He keeps His promises. Because God remembers, He takes what He said in the past and He brings it into the here and now. And so as the people of God, we remember what He says. Because our God is a God of great promises, but also a God of great remembrance. That what He said, He remembers. And He brings those words into our lives today.